Hey, how are you guys?
Doing all right. Curious, we'll get Michael a join. He's writing a small novel, it looks like, over in the Slack.
Oh, is he?
Okay, I think I convinced him and that I wanted to chat about the Goss versus PyTest stuff. I think he was writing a big regrets he didn't want to join and then changed his mind when he saw the topic.
I think he's not feeling well. Looks like that's what he's saying. Did you resolve your issue, Brad? I think you were having. Were you able to get the attestation pulled down?
Yeah, I was able to find them.
Okay.
Okay. I'm still wondering, is there a good way to check that signature that's in the task annotations? Do you know? You just basically have to decode it and send it through cosine somehow, or?
I believe so. I think the Tecton CLI only checks via OCI. I think it pulls from OCI or something, right? I don't think it pulls from the annotations. So
Yeah, I was wondering if you could pull it from the task itself using kubectl and then verify it somehow. Because the payload seems to work. And the other thing I ran across yesterday, I talked, is that it looks like there's some hints that you can put in to get the git URL and git commit as materials on the attestation for tests. You have to use some specific parameter names in order to pass that in. But
yeah, there's a lot of type hinting going on. So they were fixing that upstream. I know there's a PR that's going through at the pipeline level that is going to capture the config source. So you're able to get the actual, what the Git repository was that was doing the build for that specific thing. So that's still being worked upstream, but that's going to come through.
That's part of the pipeline attestation work, or?
No, it's I mean it's gonna get pulled in there too, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna fix the task one also. It's gonna be for both.
Oh, so you wouldn't have to put all these magic parameters in your tasks and stuff?
Right.
Good.
Yeah, for the Git clone, for the actual Git repo and stuff like that. Yeah.
Given that
I think the pipeline is also missing it so far. Pipeline attestation.
Given that the Git clone task is a common one that's used so many places, it would be nice to just put the magic variables over there.
Right. Or not have the magic variables. I think what they're trying to do is not rely on the magic variables. It's like, hey, it gets captured by the annotations by pipelines itself, and then chains can use that information down the line. So that's how they're going to do it. So there's a PR open for it. Because they realize that, it's missing all this information. So you're definitely going to add that in. And I mean, in the meantime, I can quickly talk. I think we presented the runtime attestation stuff to the Intoto meeting a couple weeks ago. So people are pretty interested in that. And tomorrow, or actually no, today, we're going to have another meeting specific for the attestations. And I think we'll probably discuss more in detail exactly what it needs to be, what it needs to capture. We put a preliminary predicate configuration in there. And then we're going to see if there's more detail that needs to be there, if it needs to be more generic, if there are fields that are missing and such. So I think that's kind of the feedback I want to get out of that. So that work is kind of moving along. I'm like, yeah, you're not looking well. You all right?
Yeah. I think I've just been too many late nights and all that.
Wild life of the startup.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got, I think the big open question that we've been looking at is we've had the test infra and the GOS, I hope I'm saying it right. The
Yeah.
couple different options there for how we were thinking about doing some testing within the project. And so I wanted to open it up and see thoughts from people that looked at each one, what they're interested in.
Yes. So I could just start with more like I guess when it comes to the actual one versus the other, it seemed to be like one of those like Terraform versus Pulumi kind of things, like where, you know, one is a little bit more like, hey, it's more powerful, you could do all sorts of stuff, but now you're taking on the additional burden of all these other things. The other thing that I think my big worry was like if you look at Fresca right now, it's like, okay, we have all the various Kubernetes pieces, the various services that live inside Kubernetes. So we have a combination of Kubernetes YAML, we have some Helm charts, we have, we use MPX for Markdown linting, we use Make, we use all these different things. And so now we're adding on yet another sort of like whole language if we went the Python route. When it came to there was things I liked about the Python stuff where it's just like, hey, it's very easy to just sort of, if you want to have a more complicated, and Q, yep. If we had a more complicated setup there, we could just very easily, we could use whatever with, PyTest. The thing that I liked about GOS was, well, it's also a little bit simple, which comes with obviously the other trade-off of like, hey, it means that when you do need to fall back into something else, it sounds like a lot of folks just use, shell scripting or whatever. There's lots of other things to sort of hook in there. The thing that I'm kind of curious about is just like, I guess for our use cases, how much are we going to actually be falling into something that is that complicated? Because like the thing about GOS is like the stuff I liked was, one is if you actually look at our vendor code, most of them are already using GOS for their internal testing. If you, a lot of the stuff in GOS is also very simple. It's just like, hey, I make sure that this port's open or whatever, that kind of thing. There is stuff on that end. It's also just one more, just sort of, it's just like a binary as opposed to, hey, I need to install Python and the language and make sure that all those sorts of stuff is up to date. So that stuff was kind of where I was sitting. I tend to lean a little bit more towards the simpler option for now, which I believe to be GOS, just because, hey, it's just something we drop in, we add a couple of YAML files, we could even hook the YAML files into the queue. That doesn't mean we couldn't do the same thing with the Python stuff. But when I looked at some of the Python stuff, I'm like, okay, now we got to say, hey, if you want to be a developer, of this project, you need to install npm, you need to install Python, you need to install probably Go, because we're going to be probably writing something like a CLI in Go eventually for the tool. So I think all those sorts of things kind of leads to that, but those are just my thoughts. I'm not like leaning heavily for or against any of them outside of saying like my preference more on the GOS side, more because, and mostly like less to do with anything about PyTest infra, which PyTest infra actually looks cool. It's more of, is installing Python and all the other things with PyTest infra worth it compared to just sort of saying, hey, we have GOS, we have a couple of ports, open, yada, yada. Do we need hyper complicated infra tests that would sort of warrant bringing in something like PyTest infra? That's pretty much my thoughts.
If I can just add on to this, so the reason for PyTest Infra was also like mostly internal from CD. So we asked like other teams what they did, and they used Gauss originally, and they ended up doing like exactly what you said, Michael. So for the complicated test cases, they were calling shell scripts and Python scripts. So then it defeats kind of the purpose of the simplicity of Gauss. And because they needed to do more complicated stuff over time, they ended up writing their own Go framework specific for testing their use cases, which was something I wanted to avoid. And so PyTest would fill the gap in this case of test infra. That was the main reason, because we anticipate that in the future we will write more complicated tests with like more JSON parsing and stuff. So that was the idea. If the tests they stay simple, of course, just a test in the YAML could work easily. But just to check if change is up and running, I already have 4 asserts and JSON stuff and kubectl command. I can imagine that more conditions will be added for other services and to check that things are in place. So that's the only reason why.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess maybe even getting a bit more specific might be worth it, just to kind of talk a little bit about where we see what sorts of things we actually see here as being like what sorts of tests are we going to be running today, and what sorts of tests do we anticipate running tomorrow that would require something beyond Gauss? I think that would be worthwhile. So.
Yep, it makes sense. We just don't have answers for these questions right now, but it totally makes sense.
Oh, okay. Well, so in that case, does it make sense to just sort of take a step back? Like, I'm just curious, like, is there anything stopping us today from maybe not making the decision? I'm just curious if it's like, no, actually, we really do need these tests because we're starting to see these problems. Yeah, I'm just curious if folks have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything in Fresca that's really driving us to make a test infrastructure decision. I think these were just more examples of different test frameworks that you could use for other purposes, and I'm not sure that we have a good enough idea of what we want to do for testing and how we want to do the testing to really drive a firm decision on one framework versus the other at this point. I mean, we've been getting by with just doing the either the shell scripts or doing the examples in the readmes to do the validation, at least of the examples themselves, right? And assuming that the scripts that we have that stand up, the Minikube and the Fresca infrastructure execute as expected, right? So I'd be okay with kicking the can down the road for a while until we come up with a firm need for something.
Yeah, that seems relatively reasonable for me. I'm reminded of in a previous life I had a Scrum Master manager who was always talking about the last responsible moment, right? Like, make a decision when the cost of making the decision outweighs, when the cost of not making the decision outweighs the cost of making the decision. And because I think, once again, like, I think they both have their pros and cons. There's a bunch of stuff that could also change some of this, right? Like, I know, Brendan, you're working on some of the stuff to make simplifying the versioning of some of these tools. Or sorry, the upgrading of the versioning inside of our Fresca. The version bumping. Like, some of that stuff could just make the other pieces a little bit simpler, especially if we have enough tooling behind it that's just like, oh yeah, we just added another thing. Yes, there's potentially the burden of learning yet another like language for folks. Like if, hey, you got to learn Python if you want to write tests for it, but also to some extent you got to learn, how to operate in GOS anyway if you want to use GOS. There's some stuff there. I'm also well connected with the folks from GOS myself. So if there is certain things that are, let's say, missing from GOS, and we go and say, hey, like it seems really annoying that we have to include these shell scripts inside of GOS, yada yada. Is there an easy way to include something like a Go style, like plugin system where it's like, hey, here's a test. Can we write the test in something like Go, which I know Go's testing is not very good to begin with, but could we do something like that? Like that might also help some of that. But yeah.
Might not be a plugin in Go, but it might also just be contributing a PR to the upstream project. And it looks like their YAML was pretty extensible. So
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
Yeah, the thing I also do think we should think about, like, as we also look at that problem, though, is I was thinking about it also from the standpoint of I can definitely also see a world where, so we're using Q for two different things, right? One is we're using Q to actually abstract out the operations of Fresca itself, or not operations, but you know what I mean, like people adding builds, that kind of stuff. But then we're also using it to abstract out the deployment and to some extent operations of all the different pieces that make up Fresca. And one of the things I was also I'd been thinking about was, does it make sense for us to also look at a couple of options, like when we do look at testing, do folks see sort of a world where the QLang also generates at some level like the inputs to the tests, so that or is that kind of like, you know what, that's a little overboard?
Well, if you went extreme, you could actually have the Q tooling to do the testing too, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, if you have Q doing the configuration and the, and deployment stuff, you can also have the Q tooling do the testing too. I mean, it's just it's another style of validation. I'm not sure that's the best use of that. You certainly could. So I
think there's at least an interest in how much more we can drive the queue in terms of using that to define policy. I don't know how strong that interest is. I think there's like high level Fresca interest. I just don't know how much time Brad and I'll have to really dig into that in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not a big deal, just something that I was just kind of debating about, because I do think that there's some interesting stuff that is coming out of the Q stuff has started to also have, they're starting to have their community meetings, and they're starting to have some of that stuff. So yeah. Cool. So I guess was there anything else on the agenda today? Otherwise, we could talk a little bit about KubeCon coming up.
I think we had nothing on the agenda today other than what we just threw on as we started the meeting. So go for it.
All right, cool. So I don't know who's going to be at KubeCon. Parth and myself will be at KubeCon talking about Fresca. So we have a Fresca talk, mostly just kind of showing the progress of Fresca, where we are at today, what we're kind of looking at. We're also showing off a couple of examples where probably going to show off a quick example of the attestation output coming out of Fresca and being put into Guac, which is also going to be one of the talks at KubeCon. Yeah, so that's that. Actually, one thing, because I saw your messages, Brad, because maybe I might just be misunderstanding. Is it the format that you're concerned about, or the storage type that you're concerned about?
No, it was more verifying that in the case where you only have Tecton to do the storage, can you verify that Chains actually did what it was supposed to? And I was able to work through and find the attestations and signatures on the individual tasks themselves. I think ideally we'd like to also have the pipeline attestation, but I think that work is still in progress. So
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was just going to bring up like the pipeline attestation. I think after KubeCon, I can, we can start looking into that more. I can help out getting that, start testing that and all that kind of stuff. It's been, with KubeCon and everything, it's been a little bit busy right now, but I think after KubeCon, we can definitely look into the pipeline attestations. I think that's definitely worthwhile investigating to see, what that adds in terms of like, is it adding any of the missing features? I think the whole question I think you brought up, Brad, before is like, we need to make one task contain all the different steps and all that kind of stuff. Like, so I think that resolves that issue. So I think we should definitely look into it and make that the primary output or something, if that's meeting all our needs. So that's something that we definitely want to look into. And maybe it's missing, maybe that needs to, involves updating the cosign tool also, right? Because if it's looking at the task runs or something, actually it's looking at OCI directly. Is that right, Remy? Maybe Remy can correct me, but Tecton Chains, the CLI tool, I think goes directly to Recore and OCI and doesn't look at Chains directly. Is that correct? I think Remy's offline, maybe. But I mean, if that needs to be updated or something, we can go do that, and then we can get a full pipeline attestation coming out. And like I was saying before, I think the source configuration stuff is being worked. So there's a lot of things in motion, especially on the pipeline side. The PR that the pipeline or the Spire work, basically the first piece got merged, right? Now what's happening is the second two PRs are getting broken out. So we're getting some help from the Google side, because it seems like they're very much interested in getting all that stuff incorporated into pipelines itself too. So they're helping out break out some of the PRs and just make it a little bit easier just to push the PRs forward and make it easy to merge in. So functionality wise, it's not changing. You're just making it into smaller pieces, and that's it. So that work is ongoing. I think another PR got approved today, so that might get merged. So I think we broke it out into three or four extra PRs basically for Spire. So that work is ongoing. So that should help the Spire stuff get in quicker, hopefully by the end of the year.
Cool.
So I think Fresca can finally be, the level 3 that it claims. The other thing I was saying, like what I'm going to show, I'm also going to start adding in the Tetragon runtime. So for the KubeCon demo, I'm going to show the Spire piece and runtime piece all together, kind of show like, hey, look, we have a complete picture. And then we can, like, again, after KubeCon, I can start working on getting the actual Tetragon in there. My goal is basically to have, Chains communicate with it at this point. So I have the POC of all that kind of stuff working. This week, actually, I made a change upstream for Tetragon. It wasn't outputting in terms of like what policies, like tracing policies. I'm not sure if like people have used Tetragon at all, but basically there's tracing policies that you have to enable in Tetragon in order for it to check for, like, let's say, TCP connects, file access and so forth. So that piece, all Tetragon, what information it gave back in terms of what was active was just a name, and if it's enabled, the policy. like, which is useless. So I needed, we need deeper information in terms, especially to capture into the attestation of exactly how that tracing policy is configured, so that this way we know, like, hey, TCP connect is being monitored, right? This is being monitored. Network connectivity is being monitored. I should expect to see, connection calls in my log. So if I'm checking for hermetic build or something, I can go check for that. If it's not there, then like, oh, I'm not checking for it, so I can't say with certainty that yes, this is a hermetic build because I was never checking for those things. So that's why we want to capture that kind of information. So I quickly put together like a very rough code just to get it working for KubeCon. So those are the pieces I'm gonna kind of show off. So now we have a complete, we're not missing any pieces for Fresca. We have the complete, based off the reference architecture, we have all the pieces that were required to be there. So that's the goal. And yeah, I think after KubeCon, my goal is definitely to, help out in terms of the pipeline attestations, get the runtime stuff in and whatever else, and hopefully the Spire stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, Brad, if you're interested, I think we're going to have, actually, no, that thing is a internal meeting, but yeah, if you're interested on the runtime stuff, we meet weekly
Okay.
on Mondays. I think I sent you the invite before, so that's still going on. So if you're interested in providing input, I think we want to make it more generic. I think that's a little bit too specific for Tetragon. And I think that's just my lack of knowledge of the other tools, basically. So I've just kind of been basing it off my understanding and what needs to be captured. So I definitely want input from others, from the community, just to be like, hey, maybe, these are the fields that are required. You can make it more general this way. So
cool.
Remy's back. So Remy, quick question for the Tecton Chains CLI tool, right? This looks at OCI and Recore. It doesn't look at anything specific to Tecton Chains, right? It's not looking at annotations or anything.
It does look at stuff like that, depending
does.
on what you define. But I was not able to respin my stuff to test for Brad's questions yesterday. I will try to do it today to answer these questions. But it does check based on your settings.
I see. So
yeah,
that
I was having issues with the CLI working yesterday to verify the attestation for a task that didn't produce an image into OCI, right? So if I checked the task that produced the image, then I could get the attestation back. But if I checked a different task, like the get clone task, I couldn't get the payload for that attestation.
Yes,
with the CLI.
It's not going to work. It's only going to work where you have the special variables like image URL and image digest, I think.
Okay, so that sort of implies that it's actually going directly to OCI to do some of that operation, right?
Yeah.
Because I was able to use kubectl to then go and look at the task run itself and get the annotations, the payload and the attestation annotations directly from there using kubectl. But so
okay.
Yeah, so I don't think it's looking at Tecton Chains annotations. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were just thinking about it in terms of the pipeline attestations that are now available. I mean, it's not released, I think, in Tecton Chains yet, but it's there. So I think we want to do some testing to see what that's outputting and stuff. And then if needed, we can update the Tecton CLI tool to go monitor that. But if it's looking at OCI only, then maybe it's not necessary. Then it should be fine.
I feel like that's a sad look on Brad's face, hoping that it did look just internal as some of the stuff in Tecton and not out at OCI.
yeah, it would be nice to get it from the Tecton CLI directly instead of having to go through kubectl, but
that should be
just
doable.
a convenience.
So,
yeah.
I wonder if that's
Especially when you start doing pipeline level attestations. If you want to verify some of that stuff, I don't know if you're going to push that up to CI or not.
Yeah. Also, one other thing to throw a wrench. I noticed that with some of the Tecton payload stuff, I have noticed, and this could be just a bug in the CLI because we weren't anticipating all the different changes, is like some of them just sort of like it'll return a payload and then I think it hangs waiting for something else and then just sort of sits there. Yeah, so there's some stuff there too. I think the folks who have been doing the pipeline attestations have said they want to also make it flexible. Like they don't want it to just purely be like all or nothing. They want to say, okay, cool. We're not also doing task attestations. It's like, no, pipeline attestations and task attestations, and potentially also allowing people to be flexible with where they get stored and yada, yada, yada. They're looking to include what they're calling, it's no longer resources. It's essentially just like types. It's just types where you can go and say, hey, look for I mean, it's essentially the same thing as a resource. I don't know why, but what the real distinction is, but where you can kind of like provide additional rules and that kind of stuff.
Maybe I can send Brad and Mitch. Maybe I can send you guys my presentation. Maybe you guys can give some kind of feedback for the KubeCon presentation once I have it, just to make sure I cover everything. And if it's interesting, I need to work on it still, but I'm going to try to make it like I'm trying to contemplate if I should record the demo kind of thing, so I'm not sitting there on the computer. I can just like kind of click through it. And I saw somebody else do that at the Open Source Summit, and it seems a lot more like, hey, you click it, it goes through a certain piece, and then it stops, and you kind of talk through it and all that kind of stuff, instead of you kind of like typing in commands. It seemed a lot more fluid.
Yeah, probably keeps you flowing better.
Yeah,
I do it with ASCII Cinema a lot. The challenge you have to make sure is that you don't record it too quick.
Right.
I have habitually do that. I'll think, in my head, I'm just typing through everything. I'm like, yeah, I can talk to this. And then when I'm actually up there talking, I'm like, okay, I got to slow this thing down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So
having breakpoints is good though.
Is that worth putting time into, kind of like recording it and putting pieces in there, I guess?
I prefer myself to being up on stage, just knowing how much stuff can go wrong with conference Wi-Fi and laptops the day before. The fewer things that can go wrong, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be more upfront work, but I think it might be a better presentation during the actual day. Less stress.
When the lab presentations work, they're pretty cool. Kelsey does an awesome presentation on all the stuff he does, so hats off to him. I'm just not that good.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think I might do that too. I might spend some time getting that kind of set up. It'll probably make it easier because you show a lot of things in Fresca, so it's like switching back and forth, and having multiple things open on the screen makes it a lot harder to read. So maybe just recording it might be better.
Two things to consider. One is if your slides are online and someone click through them later on, that makes it more useful to them later on. The downside is if they switch it to a PDF, the PDF output of that doesn't look good at all.
Right.
Just like recording here.
All right. What do you use to record? You just use native
ASCII Cinema
software?
Is what I'm doing, because it's just the text.
Okay.
If you're doing a whole screen, you need to do something different for that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I use what's it called?
While Michael's looking it up, I've seen people even just use Zoom, just schedule a meeting with themselves and hit record.
Huh.
hold on, let me see this. It's what's it called? OBS. That's it.
Yeah, OBS.
OBS. Yeah.
Yeah. That one's usually the simplest because it also, depending on what you're recording and how you're recording it, like for virtual and whatever, you can like record, your webcam along with it where you're like in the corner. You can do all sorts of stuff. It's also the stuff that people use for like streaming on YouTube and Twitch and that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's free, looks like, too.
Oh,
right?
yeah. No, it's
okay.
Yeah.
open.
Yeah.
Open.
Open
So
source. Okay.
OBS is
yeah.
my go-to if I'm recording the entire presentation, putting it up on YouTube. If I'm just recording like the demo and putting it up on the screen while I'm talking to it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
I
is
think-
CAP, KAP, if you also want to look at something else, which is also simple.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Cool. Well, good luck on your demos next week.
Yeah.
Enjoy the event without us. I'll have a lot of FOMO.
It's it's a shame. Would have liked to see you folks, and then we'll have to still if okay, ship you a shirt.
Parth, make sure to say hi to Will and Tim and David. They'll be there.
Are they? Okay. Yeah, definitely. I'll connect with them. I need to message Will, actually. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Oops.
I
think they always go to KubeCon, right? I think they're always Will, Tim, and
especially
David.
Will and Tim. David, I'm sure, sneaks in a bunch of them, but yeah, they get in there. It's the rest of the peons that have to sit back and watch.
What else? Also one of the coming things is because we're going to be making the announcement actually today for Guac to show off some of that stuff. Guac most likely I have a feeling there's going to be some issues we might open up to sort of get some integration there as well with that tool. To be clear, it's not actually anything on the Fresca end at this point. It's mostly just Guac can just look at OCI, it can look at a bucket, it can look at whatever and just pull down attestations coming out of it. One of the things actually that we did realize, so it turns out, and this is an issue we got to open up with Tecton chains. It turns out Tecton is not actually generating valid salsa. It generates valid salsa if it only uploads a single task to OCI. But if it uploads multiple, it's supposed to, I think, be uploading it as JSON lines, but it doesn't. It just sort of like, here's one JSON, and then right next to it is a second JSON, and all on one line. And that sort of thing is just not gonna.
That's a new version of Tecton chains you're using, or what was this?
This was at least fairly recently. So actually, I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but if I go over to, I can literally show this in a second.
So you have two different tasks that are outputting the same image. Is that right?
No.
I'm just wondering
So
how that happens.
that I'm
Right.
not 100% sure. I've seen in certain contexts, it has two attestations associated with it. So hold on, this is the SPDX. This is the. So if I go and download, oh, it's going to be already
So
dead.
maybe like the image build and the image sign step both have an attestation there.
Yeah,
or
something
have
like
the-
that. Yeah. It's yeah. So well, this is actually just the one because I had deleted this for the example. But if I go and do Right. Since I run it so often, if I have multiple on the same repository, it gets a little weird. All right. Which one is this one called again? Okay.
Is it maybe multiple runs and it's a reproducible image?
No, I don't think actually it might be. Let's see. So if I run this and, and I haven't pushed out these changes yet because they were very specific for a demo, but if we, if folks are interested, I could also upload them to ours. But yeah, the output of this was like in OCI, I had two attestations just sort of linked together with each other.
And you're just using Fresca as it is right now, but on the main branch, or did you do anything? Did you change anything?
No, I didn't change anything with
Change or anything?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
didn't change anything there.
Okay.
And also, let me go in. Since my screen is everything's all flickery again. Let me try and just changing the refresh rate tends to make it go away for a bit. Cool. So, all right, I can do normal sort of stuff that we do for the repos, yada yada. Right, so SBOM, yada yada is there. Cool. And I'm just not even going to verify it. I'm just going to show you. Okay. Now, one of the things here is if I do format, right, it doesn't format it. And one of the reasons why it doesn't format it is because this is not actually JSON. And if I go and run it through JQ, if I run it through JQ, oh, and you know what, let me put that into like outputs / test.json. So you see right here, right, there is a second like thing. Both of these have the same hash, sorry, the same tag and, or sorry, same repo and digest. This one is actually, I'm not even sure if it's literally the same. I actually haven't.
I wonder if it's a bug or something.
Yeah, I mean, could be. Yeah. Let's see. This one is destination, build and push, Canico. So this one's the Canico. Let's see if this, yeah, this one's also looks to be Canico build.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Are the timestamps different at the end there?
Let's see. 1443. Oh, so 1444. Yeah, no, they're the same. It's 1443.22, 1443.22.
I think
Yeah,
the
so-
bug.
Yeah. So that must be a bug in chain. So we can take a look and see what the minimal is.
This does remind me of one of the salsa comments they're working on right now is the 1.0, which is that people should actually be not just generating all these attestations, but verifying them.
Right.
They thought that would be a good, useful feature of people to do for security.
Yeah.
So do you have the same thing in the task run itself? If you So if you get the,
So yes, if
if you
I
get the
go,
task run JSON and then look at the metadata annotations, is that right? What it is?
yeah. So, well, even if I just take the payload, what I get is this, which is it gives me one thing and then just hangs indefinitely.
Is that what you were seeing too, Brad, yesterday? I think you were mentioning it was hanging. I
Well,
think in the
so
same spot.
yeah, I was seeing with the one that produces the image, it would eventually return, but the one that wasn't producing the image, like the get clone task, if you do the same thing on the get clone task, it would hang.
Oh, that's
like
where it would
that.
hang. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's getting confused with the double, that not the two attestations.
Huh. But I wasn't seeing anything weird in the attestations that I was looking at yesterday off of the task run itself. Or yeah. So I was looking at the attestations for ended up being the sample pipeline one. And they looked fine to me yesterday. So I don't know what's different between. That's why I was asking if you look at if you do kubectl get the task run
Mhm.
and then look at the metadata annotations on there and then look at that. Yeah. It's involved, but you can get the payload out of there.
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar how to get that. Is it like,
There's an incantation on the PR that I just put up yesterday
oh, okay, yeah, let me,
to pull that out for a particular task run. Since I was playing around with it, I figured I'd just put up the PR on what I came up with for that.
so which one was this? Was this the investigating chains v0.12 or?
Yes. No, it's
wait,
the
sorry.
most recent one. Yeah.
Oh, the most recent one. Whoops, my bad. Okay. And I see.
So the weird thing is that you have to get the UID of the task in order to then be able to query the specific annotation that you need. Because the task UID is embedded in the key for the annotation that you need.
Oh wow, this is really nice. I was not familiar with JLess.
Yeah, it's kind of convenient if you're gonna, if you're wandering through a JSON file trying to figure out what's in there.
Yeah. Okay, so it pulled this and then it ends right there. Hold on, right? Yeah. So if I,
But you can just replace JQ
yeah,
or
yeah.
JLess with JQ and
Yep. Yeah, let me just actually not even do that. Let me just see if it does the same thing. No, this time it returned 1.
yeah. So I don't know. That may be just an issue with how it's uploading it to OCI. Maybe, I don't know.
Hold on. So if I do, wait, do I have sget?
Is the task run itself embedded in the attestation at all? I don't know off the top of my head.
So I guess
Just to confirm that they are for the exact same task run, right?
Yeah. So so they do seem to be for literally that same exact one, but the thing that I'm kind of, so if I go in and like, because even if I download the attestation, it does show like there's 2 payloads. So if I download this, you can see there's 1 payload and then there's a second payload coming from that image.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of me intimates that it might be something to do with the OCI storage of that. But
Well, technically they have different, they're technically different payloads. I'm just like, just looking, doing a cursory glance. I'm seeing like, nope, they, yeah, at least with some, oh no, sorry, the signature is different. Oh, maybe because, oh, is it, wait. Hold on.
It's signed twice, one with the KMS or
Yeah.
KMS and one with an X509.
Mm.
Yeah. So that might be what's happening. But the thing there is that it should, so Tecton views it as 2 attestations instead of multiple signatures in the same attestation. Where that like the Dizzy envelope should support multiple signatures, even though almost everything seems to support just the one.
Yeah, Dizzy may support it, but I don't think many people use it like that.
Yeah. But I mean, in this sort of case, it makes sense, right? You're like, I don't actually have 2 different attestations. I have one attestation signed by 2 parties.
So are there 2 signatures in the task run itself in the annotations?
Yeah, so let's see.
You can shorten that one query to just look at the annotations instead of a specific one.
Yeah, let me do that. Whoops, I forgot the trailing. So there's signature task. Oh, so that's the signature of the test run. So there's this payload. Do you know if this signature is, I assume, the signature on this payload, or?
Yeah, I think so. Pretty sure that's true.
Huh. Well, I only see the one signature. Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could do a little bit more investigation and maybe open up an issue here with, oh, wait, hold on. Applied configuration. Yeah, no, it's just this one signature, which.
So that the invalid JSON that you were seeing before, though, might just be because you're running that through the JQ query and outputting both of those things as a raw output. And it's just finding multiple matches. So it's not really an invalid JSON at that point. We're just.
Sure. So it's the, when I download, yeah, I guess that's a good point. I guess the thing there is I would expect, well, the correct way to do it, at least according to in Toto, is to store it as JSON lines if possible, or output, or if you were to say, hey, I'm downloading an attestation, it should output it as JSON lines if possible. I think
but in this case, I think you're decoding 2 separate chunks of JSON. And it's the JQ command that just concatenate the 2 together.
Yeah. No. I get that. The thing there is if I actually look at that original thing here, there's just somewhere in here is a gap, and it's like, oh, that's the end of that JSON. Now here's the start of the next JSON right after it.
But was this the output of that JQ command, or was this something?
No, this is literally, this is the output of download JSON, or sorry,
Okay.
download as attestation.
Okay.
So if I go and look and here, let me just see. All right.
I'm gonna have to drop in a couple of minutes for another meeting. So
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's not, this is not a huge deal. Yeah, see, like right here. And so if I actually pipe this into JQ, JSON is able, like the JQ can sort of say, oh, these are just two separate JSON objects you want me to just sort of plop out. The problem is most other things don't view it as valid JSON, right? Like the thing here, right, is if it's a Dizzy envelope, it should look something like, you know, and then there would be something like, you know, sig, whatever. And the signatures would be over there. And it does look like scrolling across, it's 100% identical. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like the thing here is just knowing what the expectation should be. Like if the expectation here is like JSON lines, or sorry, it's potentially going to output multiple things. You just need to know that it could be multiple and it's going to be in sort of a non-standard format. Hey, that's fine. We'll just gotta modify that in some way to something like a JSON lines file or whatever. But ideally, right, I would like it to be outputting to something like JSON lines, since that's the thing that in Toto is at least pushing, or some other format that's similar, right? Right now, it just seems to be by convention, it just sort of appends them and doesn't do anything else afterwards. And that could lead to, you know, whatever. But yeah, okay, that's fine. I think I'll just probably open up an issue with open up an issue with Tecton chains and see what they want to do with it. All right, cool.
Sounds good. Have a good coupon.
Yep, thanks.
Bye bye.
here's